All right, we are back. We just went ahead and configured Microsoft Entra ID, and we've got federated authentication set here. And you can see that that has been completed and that it's got verified domains. Now there's one more step we actually have to do on this page before we can turn on directory sync. And that's actually enabling federation on one or more of these new domains. So what we need to do here is hit edit, and you can see we've got verified ownership for automatatech.com, and we can either federate this one or both. I'm going to go ahead and just federate automatatech.com. I'll just click there. I've got one username conflict here. All right, now that that's completed, and I'll explain a little bit about what this is in case you see this yourself. I had to do a little bit of research, find out what this was about. So I actually created an Apple ID using this at automatatech.com a long time ago, and used it for a completely different project. It had nothing to do with mobile device management. And when you are enabling federation on a domain, it checks to see the record of all the public Apple IDs, just the regular old-fashioned personal Apple IDs that are out there, to see if any of them are using the same domain that you're trying to federate. And in my case, it did find that. And what it's done now is I've gone ahead and just said, yeah, let the user know that they need to select a different Apple ID for that account. And I'm actually going to end up abandoning that anyway. I'll change it, but it's not something that I'm going to be too concerned about. But it may be a big deal for you guys. So depending on if you've got people that have had work accounts that have created personal Apple IDs with their work email addresses at your domain, you may see this, and it's probably likely that you will. And you'll need to have Apple notify those users at those email addresses, letting them know that, hey, you've got to change your Apple ID account because now it's being federated. And there'll be managed Apple IDs that will be issued that could be in conflict with the Apple ID that they had already created themselves using their work domain. So you can certainly contact Apple if you have any questions about that, and reach out to Apple Care support. But what it's done now is it's gone ahead and said, I've notified that automatatech.com Apple ID, that was a personal Apple ID out there that I'd created myself a couple years ago, letting them know that they've got 60 days before they make that, they have 60 days basically to change that Apple ID to something else. Otherwise, it's going to get overwritten with what we've done here with federation. And now that federation here is enabled here, it allows us now to turn on directory sync. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now that we've got directory sync enabled, I can go ahead and sync now, and it will talk between Apple Business Manager and Microsoft Entra ID. Now it's going to do this automatically on a regular basis, but I can click sync now just to force it. And if I go over to my activity, you'll see my updates, update complete, sync initiated, and I've got my logs here as well. Now I want to go over to users and show you something else that's kind of neat. Now we're going to end up having our end users create managed Apple IDs themselves as they first sign in with their actual Entra ID credentials. But you could also, if you needed to create a manual Apple ID for some reason, you can go in here and hit add, and now you'll see how before we had that weird one that was sort of like automatatechcom.appleid.com or whatever, and that's still in here in the list. but now I have the ability to use my actual domain. So now I've got my personalized domain. So now when I create a managed Apple ID manually, it's going to have that personalized domain on there. And if my users are signing in with their Entra ID credentials, it'll automatically create that account with that same email address that they're using. All right, well, that was a lot to go through, but we have knocked out two of the three main integrations between Apple Business Manager and our Microsoft 365 tenant. So we've got automatic device enrollment and push notifications set to go. We've got federation and directory sync ready to go. And a little bit later in the course, we will tie apps and books to Intune so we can do managed distribution. But we'll get into that more when we get into the content management section a little bit later. But for the rest of this section, we're going to stay within Apple Business Manager, and I'll cover some more things that involve onboarding devices and setting up some different settings for your Apple Business Manager tenant.